I want to talk a little bit about the concept of time. And I want to speak about this because something I've been struggling with lately is the concept of time. And I think the reason why I've been struggling with it more so comes from people's outside projections and not necessarily my own internal voice. And that's something that I'm currently working to remove, is like this outside projection. But I want to talk about the concept of time as it relates to the research that I've been doing on, different indigenous communities. And let me just break this down. So back in 2023, I went to Japan and went to an Indigenous Ainu community where I spoke with the leaders, the women's, the matriarch of the tribe and of the people. And, if you want to watch that documentary, it's on YouTube. Just go click the link in bio. It's free, it's educational, it's informative. And it tells you all about the Indigenous Ainu people who are currently facing a lot of injustices in Japan. And, it tells you about life before what we see modern Japan to be. So life before all the indigenous culture was kind of wiped out or erased or stigmatized. But one of the things that she spoke to me about was the Ainu people's concept of time. And I think this resonates a lot with not just the Ainu people, but a lot of indigenous people all over the world. So before I get into what their concept of time is and what she shared with me, I want to share something that I think, I know I'm going through, and probably a lot of people my age. I'm 28, but also a lot of people who aren't 28, probably younger, older, whatever the case may be, are going through right now, because I just think it's almost like a canon event that you experience when you live within a capitalist society. So for me, I noticed when I graduated college, I kind of felt like I was on this ticking time clock. I felt like, okay, I graduated, I need to have a job, I need to be doing this, I need to check all these boxes. And all those boxes, of course, I know now after examining, it's just boxes that society created, limited boxes that society created. But I didn't realize that the reason why whenever I was working on a creative project, I always felt like I was running out of time and didn't have enough time was because I was limiting myself to these societal projections and these tick boxes of time somehow being something that you can lose out on, and time being something that is linear, right? Which is just such a flawed way of thinking. It's something that's instilled in us, like I said, from capitalism and from, I'm African American, I exist in America, so I'm automatically experiencing the oppressions and the trauma that come with being a Black woman. And, that, of course, lived experience added on to feeling like, oh, I'm running out of time. I need to get it together. I need to put this out, put that out. And that feeling of running out of time and that feeling like time being linear, like I said, it wasn't my own. It was something that was placed on me by outside people who said, you need to be doing X, Y, and Z, instead of, as an artist, taking my time with my art, not feeling like I had to be rushed. Because when you feel as an artist or as a creative or as somebody who's putting anything out in the world, when you feel like you're being rushed and time is just this straight timeline where you need to, check all the boxes and hit these milestones, that's when you become stagnant. Or at least that's when I noticed I became stagnant, and it was hard for me to put things out. It was hard for me to complete things because I was holding myself to these imaginary timelines. And it was so interesting when I went to Japan and spoke with the Ainu leader, because what she shared with me is that in indigenous cultures, time is considered cyclical and spatial, not linear. So in Ainu thought, there's essentially no clear line of past, present, and future. It's no delineation. Essentially, they consider time to move in circles of reciprocity. So the best example that I can think of this is if you thanked a bear for its life, or if you thanked fire for the sustenance and the warmth that it gave you. If you did this, you weren't considered to be honoring the past. You would actually be considered to be just completing a spiritual circle of renewal of life. And I think the same applied to seasonal rituals as well. There were a lot of seasonal rituals like salmon fishing, bear hunting, harvesting, things of that nature. Those seasonal rituals were not about marking a date. Rather, it was more about synchronizing with the rhythm of Kamoi. And Kamoi is just the Ainu spirit. It's another word for spirit in the Ainu language. And this even applied to the past, right? This even would apply to what we consider to be history, right? When Ainu people talked about historical events, it wasn't talked about like it happened in the past. But what I thought was incredibly interesting is they didn't necessarily have a word or like a concept for history or the past. When somebody was talking about the past, it was looked at as if the spirit of the past or the spirit of whatever story they're telling was possessing them in a sense, and they were telling. So for example, if somebody was telling the story of an ancient hero from the past, it wouldn't be looked at as the past, right? It wouldn't be looked at as a timeline of the history. Rather, it would be treated as those ancient heroes are still alive today. Their life force energy, obviously they're not physically alive, but their life force energy is still alive today. And that life force energy is possessing whoever's speaking at the time and talking about that heroic tale or talking about that hero or whatever ancient historical thing happened. It was looked at as if that hero that they're talking about or instance would possess them, and that's who was speaking. So there was no sort of past, present, or future, but it all kind of aligned. And when you speak of something that happened in the Western idea of the past, it was actually just that energy or that entity coming through and speaking through you as a storyteller in that time. So it's not linear. It's a circuit, but it's also spatial. So they basically looked at it in the sense of there is no old world and there is no tradition, there is no history, and there's nothing that happened back then. Like, you know how we always say like, oh, that was back then. There is no back then. It's all the same space that just opens cyclically through ritual and can be opened and closed. So you can kind of jump into those different like time frames, if that makes sense. And I thought that was really interesting because I think so much of the pressures that come from being an artist, come from being a creative, or come from being anybody who doesn't necessarily fit into the capitalist structure is rooted in that concept of time and time running out and time not being spatial or cyclical, when really we should go back to these indigenous ways of thought where it's not linear and you don't need to check these milestones, but it's all kind of interconnected. So I would love to know what you guys think about time, what your concept of time is, how it impacts you, and if you're interested in learning more, watch on Incendiary Balloons.